Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a pretty fascinating journey. We're going to go from those everyday gym myths that almost everyone believes, all the way to the unchangeable genetic blueprints and, frankly, the life-or-death realities of elite muscle. If you've ever looked at a fitness magazine or a professional bodybuilding stage and wondered what's actually real and what's pure illusion, well, you're in exactly the right place.
Here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, busted, common gym myths. 2, the genetic lottery, muscle insertions. 3, pushing limits, the mass monsters. And finally 4, the dark side of bodybuilding.
All right, Section 1, busted, common gym myths.
Let's tackle those stubborn, highly relatable lies you hear on day 1 at the gym. You know the drill. Someone tells you light weights are for toning and heavy weights are for growing. Look, the truth is, your muscles don't have a toning mode. What they actually respond to is mechanical stress and tension. The science is incredibly clear here. You can build muscle across literally any rep range, from 5 all the way up to 30, as long as you take your sets close to failure and apply progressive overload. Oh, and speaking of getting lean, you can do 1,000 crunches a day, but spot reduction is a total myth. Your body burns fat from wherever it decides to, not just the muscle you happen to be working.
Then there's the classic fear of the barbell. The idea that heavy weights inherently cause injury, but science says the exact opposite. Progressive strength training with proper technique actually reduces sports injuries by up to 50%. That is huge. It strengthens your tendons, increases bone density, and builds protective connective tissue. The weight itself is completely neutral. What actually hurts you is ego lifting, skipping progressive loading, using terrible form, and trying to lift way more than your body has actually adapted to.
And of course, we absolutely cannot talk about gym myths without talking about the pump. Arnold Schwarzenegger famously compared the feeling of the pump to the greatest feelings you can possibly have in life. And yeah, it feels amazing. But here's the reality check. The pump causes zero permanent structural change. None. It's just a temporary increase in blood flow and fluid that fades within hours. It plays almost no direct role on how much muscle you're actually building. And that extreme soreness you feel 2 days later? Actually, scratch the idea that soreness equals growth. That's just a measure of novelty and mechanical damage, not a sign of a productive stimulus. You can have a perfectly optimized muscle-building workout and wake up the very next day feeling totally fine.
Moving on to Section 2, the genetic lottery, muscle insertions.
So we really need to talk about muscle insertions. A muscle insertion is the exact point on the bone where a muscle attaches. This is basically your genetic blueprint, and it entirely dictates the muscle's final shape, its length, and its absolute visual potential. Hard work, a perfect diet, and optimal recovery can certainly build the muscle you have, but they cannot change this fundamental biological framework.
Let's break down what this actually looks like in real life. High insertions gave Arnold Schwarzenegger his famous sharp mountain peaks, whereas lower insertions give athletes like Flex Lewis a much fuller, rounder look. And how about abs? Whether you have a 4-pack, a 6-pack, or an 8-pack is decided before you're even born by the tendinous ear sections in your DNA. Ronnie Coleman, literally one of the greatest bodybuilders ever, had a 4-pack simply because of his genetics, not because of his body fat percentage. High calf insertions leave these unfillable gaps above the ankle, and low lat insertions create that dramatic V-taper sweep that visually narrows the waist. You either have it or you don't. Take a look at the traps. It's wild. A low origin point for the trapezius allows the neck to breathe and makes the shoulders look incredibly broad. But if you have a high origin, like the immensely strong Johnny Jackson, developing those traps causes the mass to bunch upward. It literally compresses the space between the jaw and the shoulder. It swallows the neck entirely and can actually make a heavily developed athlete's shoulders look narrower. It's just a genetic reality you were born with.
Okay, Section 3, pushing limits, the mass monsters. So, what happens when elite genetics are combined with an absolute refusal to accept limits? We shift from natural biology to what happens when the human ceiling is just completely shattered. Let's rapidly run through this freak factor hierarchy. You've got Kevin Levrons' cartoon-like muscle bellies, up to Dorian Yates, who laid the dense blueprint for the entire era. Marcus Rule brought this lab-built visual aggression, and Big Ramy brought mutated Belgian blue bull mass. But the man who broke the hinges off the door entirely, he is sitting right at number 1.
Ronnie Coleman, the absolute, undisputed king of freakiness. At his peak, Ronnie competed at 296 pounds, absolutely shredded with 22-inch arms. But it wasn't just the sheer size, it was the violent strength behind it. He trained like a powerlifter, effortlessly squatting and deadlifting 800 pounds. His body responded to brutal stimuli as if it operated under an entirely different set of evolutionary rules. The kind of stimulus that would literally destroy a normal athlete simply told Ronnie's body to grow more.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, the dark side of bodybuilding.
Now, operating beyond the bounds of human evolution carries a staggering toll. We have to look objectively at the extreme costs of the sport. The history here is deeply intertwined with severe controversies. In 1980, Arnold Schwarzenegger made a surprise return to the Olympia and won, which was a judging decision met with loud boos from the crowd, sparking massive controversy. In 1989, Bob Paris, who was an aesthetically perfect champion, became the first pro bodybuilder to publicly come out as gay, and he was effectively erased by the industry. Then in 1997, champion bodybuilder Bertil Fox was convicted of the double murder of his fiancée and her mother. The bodybuilding community largely went silent on this until his release on a pardon in 2022.
But beyond the social and legal scandals, the biological toll is, well, it's terrifying. 833. That is the weight, in grams, of competitive bodybuilder Dallas McCarver's heart when he died at just 26 years old. To put that into perspective, a normal human heart weighs roughly a third of that. While the official story was that he choked on food, his autopsy revealed a chemically overloaded heart and organs showing literally decades of deterioration, all inside a 26-year-old body.
Or take Andreas Munzer, a man who completely erased the limits of conditioning, walking around with skin like paper and near 0% body fat. In March 1997, just days after a guest posing appearance in Munich, his body systematically failed. Tumors in his liver, his kidneys shutting down, and unstoppable internal bleeding. He died at just 31 years old, a documented casualty of extreme chemical protocols and diuretics. And look, the physical price is paid even by the legends who actually survived their competitive years. Flex Wheeler, a man Ronnie Coleman called the greatest he'd ever seen, suffered degenerative kidney disease and ultimately had his right leg amputated at 54 due to circulatory and vascular damage. Rich Piana was famous for being radically transparent. He openly broadcasted his exact chemical cycles to millions of followers. In 2017, he collapsed and died, and his autopsy revealed a dramatically enlarged heart and severe liver damage. He died from exactly what he spent years telling his audience he was doing. These tragedies often compound in really complex ways, too. In 2018, Shawn Rhoden became the oldest man to win Mr. Olympia at 43. But less than a year later, in July 2019, he was charged with 3 felony sexual assaults and was banned from defending his title. The case never even made it to trial. In November 2021, Shawn Rhoden died of a heart attack at 46. He was never convicted, never cleared, and he remains the only champion to die while reigning, his legacy forever suspended in controversy and sudden biological failure.
So the crucial point is this. We absolutely marvel at the illusion of physical perfection on stage. We study the genetics, we analyze the training, and we revere the mass. But when the pursuit of absolute physical greatness requires you to push past the limits of human biology, sometimes at the cost of your organs, your legacy, or your actual life, you have to ask yourself, is the trophy really worth the cost? Think about that the next time you look at a bodybuilding stage. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. We'll catch